Hey. Oh, good evening. The Lord be with you. Warm welcome. Thanks for coming out, those of you here as well as those joining us online. Big night, big topic, and I appreciate your willingness to take the time to come and invest yourself, your time, your thoughts, your prayers, your energy, all of that into what is here in front of us as we talk about high school. So, before I talk anymore, let's pray. Father in heaven, thank you for this evening and the process so far, the opportunities to think creatively, to think big, to wonder and ask where it is that you are leading us in this time. So I thank you for an opportunity to gather. I pray your Spirit's presence, your Spirit's guidance, your Spirit's direction as we look to you. We have to. This is not something we can do by ourselves. This is not something we are here to venture out on our own. But it's about you, your work, your will. So we pray that you would help us align with that for these times. And we ask your blessing on us tonight. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. So it is exciting, an exciting time. And how this evening is going to work as a team, and I'll introduce the team here in just a little bit. We'd like to share in really more of a presentation format some of the things that we have been up to, some of the things that we had shared back at the end of April with our first information meeting where we invited congregation and school families and got some great feedback that evening, and all of which we shared with Immanuel's leadership just under 2 weeks ago or a couple weeks ago. And then at the end of our presentation, we have a recommended proposal that we're going to give. At that point, we're going to ask for a motion, a second, and then we'll open it up for discussion, questions. So as we work our way through, if there are things that come to mind, you say, oh, what was that? Or how did that work? Or what did that mean? Jot some notes for yourself, and when that opportunity comes, we'll open that up and take all questions, ideas, thoughts, concerns at that point. So, starting out, brief history, very brief. High school is not something new here at Immanuel. 20 years ago, it was on the table. Immanuel, along with an association of other churches, had done a lot of work under much of the direction of Pastor Al, who led the charge, and a number of people who are actually still here and around the Front Range. We had a principal called, was here, he and his wife, and unfortunately a personal tragedy hit them right at if we can speak in this way, at a most inconvenient time. And everything kind of fell out. The bottom fell out on that. And we had to shelve the high school project. Now, a lot's changed over 20 years. A lot in regard to technology, a lot in regard to our culture, and a lot in regard to schools. In early 2020, right after COVID had hit, this whole idea of high school here at Immanuel resurfaced. And it remained on the minds and hearts of a few of us on staff. Earlier this spring, mid-March, Cheryl Gilbert, our principal, raised a question with me, wondering if it was time to bring this back up and pursue this a little bit more seriously. So, what I'm going to have Cheryl do is, at this point, just share a little bit of some of the positive as far as why. Why a high school? Why are we thinking that right now with both things that are going on here and things going on culturally to a degree? So, Cheryl?
Hi, and thank you for being here this evening. As I have the distinct pleasure of working with a faculty and staff day in and day out who just love Jesus and love to have the opportunity to provide the highest quality Christian education. We saw huge test score jumps in kindergarten as we've been able to begin to implement new curriculum with the science of reading. And next year, we'll be expanding that on to all of the early childhood. This year, we began to use it in preschool. And as you know, if you've looked at anything in education in our community, not only socially are things going downhill, not only are they non-Christ-like, which we have the opportunity to share Jesus in everything, but test scores are plummeting. And what the early childhood, preschool on through third grade looked at this whole school year is the science of reading, the research behind the science of reading, and how we can give those children the best start. So we adopted a curriculum, just early childhood and kindergarten, and Mrs. Sarr, and she's an awesome teacher, so without the new curriculum, it would have happened. But we saw phenomenal phonemic awareness, phonological growth in our kindergartners, beyond what we've seen with anything else. We also have enjoyed sharing the love of Jesus in the toddler program. So a year ago, we were able to start the toddler program, and to this point, we have promoted 5 children out of the toddler program into full-time childcare. This summer, we currently have 78 children in King's Kids Summer Camp. Last summer, we started with 50 and ended with 153. I don't know what God has in store for the end of this summer. We are beyond blessed with what God has given us as far as talent, commitment, and wanting to share the love of Jesus day in and day out. I just happen to have the privilege of working with those people day in and day out. Parents were coming to me saying, "You're doing awesome stuff here. When do we get to do this same high-quality Christian education for high schoolers?" And maybe now's the time. I don't know what God has planned. What I know is He's blessed Immanuel with such a high-quality Christian staff that we are excited to share that with high schoolers too. So, thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl. Now, answering the why question is not just because of the positives of what we've got, what we've been doing here for almost 50 years, knowing education, and doing it quite well. But the reality is that our current culture is moving further and further away, and in some ways is diametrically opposed to what we know, what we hold, and what we believe in terms of our biblical Christian values. And so it really is, without apology, that we see this as another driver to move towards starting a high school at this point in time. Pastor Robin's going to speak a little bit more to what I'll say is a darker reality that we're up against culturally.
I love these family meetings, so I'm just going to say thanks, Dad, for the introduction. I appreciate that. We used to have family meetings with our kids on a regular basis, and it was always amazing to me as the father of the home that we would be telling the kids a lot of the things we would want to do as a family and how we were going to do them. And then one of my wonderfully loving but sometimes obnoxious children would raise their hand in the middle of the family meeting and say, "Why are we doing that?" And you understand, I think that's kind of a general rule of thumb for all of us, even though we have a really great proposal to be able to share with you. And we really do have a compelling idea about how to be able to put that proposal into action, you have to have a compelling sense of why you're doing it. And we have such an amazingly powerful set of reasons that are positive in terms of our why that compel us to move forward and share this idea and this vision with you. But also, there are some negative things. Now, I sometimes, because I'm kind of a positively oriented person, if you know me, you know that a little bit about me, I would rather use the word challenging, and I would use that actually with a caveat in the sense that they're hugely challenging, the issues that we face. And you know that. You don't necessarily have to be a person who watches television or reads articles on the internet or in the newspaper to be able to know that the times we're living in are extremely challenging. And for a lot of us who have our foundation set on a biblically honoring, Jesus following, and God honoring worldview, we know in our guts that something's wrong. Now, we can be reactive or we can proactively do something. And through a lot of prayer and a lot of conversation, we believe that this strategy of expanding our school into high school is a proactive way of responding to the challenges of the culture. Will we be able to stop everything we see around us? I personally, we could talk about this sometimes. I don't think we can stop the train of what evil we're seeing around us. But we can, again, proactively respond in a way where we can address the issues in culture from a God-honoring perspective and provide for the families and children of our community an alternative structure that can encourage them to be able to live their lives in the way that God has originally designed for it to be lived. Now, in being here in northern Colorado, I've had an opportunity to meet some amazing people. And I was thinking about how we could share with you some of the realities that we are facing without necessarily having to be up here for a couple of hours outlining in detail the challenges that we face. So instead of doing that, I thought we would show you just a brief video clip of one woman and one family's story. And this is a woman who lives in northern Colorado here in Larimer County with us, challenges she faced. And instead of exegeting this or trying to explain it, we're just going to let you see the video, and then I'd like to wrap up with a couple of comments before Pastor Glenn takes the rest of the meeting and brings the rest of the information to you about what we are going to do and how we're going to do it. So would you roll the video, please?
It was a regular day, like any Tuesday, and we sent our 2 kids that are in school off to school. My barely 12-year-old was in 6th grade. On that same day, she was invited by her trusted art and homeroom teacher to attend art club after school. So she texted us and we gave our permission for her to attend art club. And when we picked her up from that program after school, we could see on her face that something was incredibly wrong. And so we were able to get it out of her what had happened to her. But essentially, the art teacher had invited in an outside presenter. It wasn't art club, it was GSA, or gender and sexuality awareness is what they're calling it now. This presenter had no qualifications to be speaking with children about sexuality and gender. She uses a PowerPoint with GSAs that starts with her number 1 rule: what you hear in here, keep in here. She then brought out flags to describe various umbrella terms or defining words surrounding LGBTQ, as she called them. She told the kids that if they're not fully comfortable in their body, then they are transgender. So essentially told my daughter if she's not 100% comfortable in her female body, that she is transgender. She did the genderbread person activity, which she provides this to all the middle school GSAs. It explicitly asks the little kids, 11, 12, and 13 years old, who they're sexually attracted to. So she essentially asked our little girl who she's sexually attracted to, and when she didn't know, she said, well, that means you're queer, and gave her flags and stickers and bracelets and trans flags and stickers and bracelets that I later found out one of our school board members, her Facebook profile picture is waving those same flags, so I know where they came from. She also told the kids that heterosexuality and monogamy aren't normal, they're just common. She said that parents might not be safe that it's okay to lie to them about where they are for this program and for future programming. She runs an organization with kids from 5 to 18 called Skittles or Splash, depending on the age. And it sends them invites to attend future programming without parental knowledge outside of the classroom. So she's in our Boys and Girls Clubs, our libraries, our Tri-County area school system. She's a substitute teacher in the Tri-County area, and she's handing children her personal contact information along with the message that parents aren't safe and that it's okay to contact her without parental knowledge. And she asks them to connect on teen chat platforms like Discord and WhatsApp, places where she knows parents aren't monitoring the conversation. So we're really fortunate that our daughter came home and told us what happened. We knew something was wrong. She was very upfront about how she was not supposed to tell us, but how they used the flags and described different things. And she showed us all the paraphernalia that she was given. Bracelets that say "Sounds Gay," "I'm in," stickers, these flags. She got extra flags to give her friends. So that's what happened. It really caught us off guard.
So as you can imagine, and all of us have a heart for this, the education environment is one of the crucible points, one of the flashpoints right now in culture. And I had an opportunity and the honor of meeting Erin a couple of months ago personally, and I asked her for permission, and she enthusiastically encouraged us to be able to see not just this short clip, but if you'd like to see a longer clip, we have that link available to you. I'd be happy to give you any other information that we have available at our fingertips here at Immanuel, especially in a new ministry team we have called Christians Engaging the Public Square. We've assembled a bunch of resources to educate you further on the issues we're facing. But let me just kind of summarize it this way. Laws have been passed in our state that are decisively anti-parental and actually encourage children to make decisions that are contrary to God's word and God's design for life. Policies in school districts have been unapologetically implemented without parental knowledge and without even, in many instances, public knowledge of what's going on in the school system. And all these things, many of them, as I have seen and read them over, are solidly contrary to the values that we all hold dear. For those of us who love God's word and who strive to live God's truth and follow Jesus in Christian community. And like I said, we can respond in a number of different ways. To have our head in the sand, though, and pray it all goes away and kind of endure it, or to try to accommodate and make accommodations and concessions, those two strategies just don't seem to be fitting to who we are. But we can proactively respond and train people to engage culture with the power of the gospel, but also, again, provide alternative structures for parents and children to be able to learn the person of Jesus and follow his will and his ways. And so we decided to be able to put together this proposal from a very, very compelling why position as a response to the culture around us, standing firm on the truth of the kingdom of God, to live as God created us to live, to honor the family that God created and provide families and children an environment that supports God's design in the worldview and lifestyle that he created for us to be able to not only enjoy but to thrive in. And like I said before I turn it back over, if you want any information or more information on any of the current topics that we're facing in culture these days, I'm happy to help you. Pastor Glenn?
Thank you. Now, because we love kids, and we really do care about their physical, emotional, mental, spiritual well-being, we just feel compelled to do something, to act, and to provide an alternative in education that is not only excellent educationally, but is also affirming of these kids for who they are in Jesus. Because of these realities, we feel that now is the time. So the small team that we gathered originally in mid-March includes the following. We've got Cheryl, who you met already, and Pastor Robin, who is up here. Bill Busacker. Bill, you want to stand up? Why don't you guys stand as I introduce you? Bill is a former principal here at Immanuel, retired long-term educator. Martha Semenko, our director of, oh man. Yeah, how long ago? Martha Harkins, our director of children's ministries. Marcus Howard, director of youth, young adult. Kathy Schlecht, our director of worship and music ministries. Felt for this moment, for this time, just to brainstorm, to talk, to start this ball rolling, that this was a team to gather together. And what we have put together are some very initial things. One of those is a very basic vision that we're working with, have been working with, really from the very start, as far as a Lutheran high school here at Immanuel. And that is excellence in education with a Christ-centered foundation. Now, wrapped into the academics is Jesus. And as we think about Jesus as a part of our school, it's not a label of Jesus slapped on to the outside, the veneer of our school, but as it has always been through our preschool and now toddler, all the way through our 8th grade, what we would anticipate going all the way through our high school is Jesus very much part and parcel of who we are, what we teach, what we do across the academics, across the extracurriculars, that is part and parcel. It's also community and the many ways that we can foster healthy relationships within our Immanuel community, and we'll say a bit more on that in just a bit. We're dreaming big, but we're looking at how is it that we can get this off the ground in the most positive, in the most effective, and in the most timely way. Now, as a team, we have met many, many, many times. And conversations, action items, they've included this. Let me just give you a bullet list of things that we have been working on. Exploring various creative possibilities like micro schools, talking with other Lutheran high schools across the country, including Lu High down in Parker, Mayer Lutheran in Minnesota, as well as a new high school startup down in Gilbert, Arizona, that we'll be hearing just a bit more about here in a moment. We've talked about which grade or grades to start with, partnerships with area community colleges, as well as our own Concordia universities around the country. We've asked curriculum questions, extracurricular offerings, staffing, facilities that we'll need, when to open, cost factors, and talking about some of the foundational principles as to the why and how of traveling down this path of expanding our current school ministry into a high school. As a team, we thought it would be helpful to share just a bit of a model. Now, Bill, if you want to come on up, Bill has a lot of connections in Lutheran education and a lot of history in Lutheran education that he'll share with you in just a moment. But he came across a new Lutheran high school starting up in Arizona, and this is one model, a demonstration of the creative possibilities for how a high school can actually start and function well. And as a team, we looked at this model and thought, there are some things that I think are very adaptable and some things that we might take into consideration as we look and plan for what could be. So, Bill, if you would.
Thanks. This is really exciting. I've been a part of the startup of 2 other Lutheran high schools. This is different. I don't think the need has ever been greater for Christ-centered education beyond the 8th grade. But at the same time, I don't think the opportunity has ever been better. There are so many different ways of doing education today that really weren't available years ago. And the model that we found in Gilbert, Arizona, is one model that, as we looked at it as a team, we thought, this has got a lot of possibilities. Christ Greenfield in Gilbert, Arizona, that's a suburb of Phoenix, they've been operating a pre-K through 8th grade school. They decided they wanted to add high school classes. They will be opening up this fall using the model that I'm going to show you. Does that mean that our school would look exactly like that? Not necessarily. But this seems like a really workable starting point for us. What they are using is what is called a hybrid microschool model. Microschools are relatively new. They are intentionally small schools, very often 50 students or fewer. That's the intent for where they're starting. In Gilbert, they're anticipating starting with 15 kids this fall, and they're opening up with grades 9, 10, and 11, all at the same time. The way they are structuring it is they expect students to be on site 3 mornings a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday mornings, basically 8:30 to 11:30. And during that time, they're going to be doing 2 classes in person. They're going to be doing a theology class, because that's the foundation of who they are also. The other thing that they're going to do is a leadership development class. That's a very strong emphasis for their school, all the way from preschool through 8th grade. So they will be doing those 2 classes in person 3 mornings a week. The rest of the curriculum will be offered online. And they're going to tap into Orange Lutheran High School. Orange Lutheran has a very robust online education program. Orange has been doing that since 2004. They offer a full high school curriculum online. There's another option, that's Genesis Virtual Academy, coming out of Mayer Lutheran High School in Mayer, Minnesota. They also offer a very full online curriculum. But the way they're structuring their program, everything else will come online from Orange Lutheran. It's done virtually, it's done electronically, which gives a tremendous amount of flexibility. Those classes are what are called asynchronous classes. In a typical high school, your math class may run from 9 to 10 every morning. Taking it online, you can access that course at any time of the day from anywhere where you have an internet connection. So it offers a tremendous amount of flexibility. If we can go to the next slide, please. The coursework is done online, but students have access to that online instructor. They can email that instructor with questions. They can contact that instructor by phone, by text. They can set up a Zoom meeting with that instructor. Most of those instructors set very set office hours when students can contact them. And there's also a very steady stream of feedback for the student as well as for the parent, and would also be for the school here. We sort of dipped our toes into that pond in a very small way this year. I've been teaching an 8th grade class, an 8th grade algebra class. Last year I had one 7th grader that was in that class, so this year he was ready for a high school geometry class. Rather than us teaching that geometry class in person for just a single student, we enrolled him in Genesis Virtual Academy through Mayer Lutheran. That worked really well. He would come in every day at the same time I had my algebra class. He'd just grab his laptop, he'd sit down at a table, put in his earbuds, get out his notebook. He would work through the class as I was teaching algebra. Every day he would see a lesson. It was a recorded lesson that he's seeing from a class with an instructor, with other students, and then there were exercises, an assignment that he needed to work through. That worked very well. He worked through that every day. Every day, as the teacher here, I had access to see exactly what he had done, how had he done, were there specific areas he had trouble. Very regularly, I got a report from his teacher, he got a report from his teacher, his parents got that same feedback from the teacher. So there was a real solid line of communication. It really worked well for us here. So we've got a couple of options there, Orange Lutheran or coming out of Mayer, Minnesota. In Gilbert, what they're doing is then they are staffing what they're calling a learning center that will be open 8 o'clock in the morning till 3:30 in the afternoon roughly, where students can, if they wish, be working on coursework right at the school. So they can be there working or they can be working at home. It's their choice. That learning center is set up with just a variety of different seating options. So students can be working individually. If it's appropriate, they can be working collaboratively. The way they've described it in Gilbert is it's set up sort of as a student union almost. So it's a lot of different opportunities for the ways kids can be working. We've got a diagram of what they're doing, and this is one of those that you almost have to look at for 2 minutes to really get the perspective. You are looking down at it, and so the white zigzag you see in the back, that's the back wall. And you can see there's just a variety of different seating arrangements there. The other thing they will do in that learning center is they're going to have what they're calling curriculum coaches available. Staff members, adults who can help students, number one, help them stay on track with high school students. That may be an issue. But also, if there are questions, they can try to help them with those questions. Otherwise, they've got the option of going to the online instructor. Students have got a lot of flexibility there. They can be working at school, they can be working at home. So this is not like you're locked in your home for the COVID lockdown where the kids are on the computers and mom and dad are tearing their hair out because they just don't know how to deal with that. Kids are in the building for at least part of the day. They've got the opportunity to be working in the building as much as they want or as much as their parents want them to be. One of the things in talking with the folks down in Arizona, one of the things they are finding is some of the students they are finding that are really interested in this are families that have kids that are on traveling athletic teams where they would otherwise be missing a lot of school, families that tend to vacation during the school year, or because these are high school students, some of these students may want a part-time job, and this gives them a greater level of flexibility for that. This really also prepares students for where they're headed. Found an interesting statistic that indicated a very large number of college students are taking at least part of their degree program in this manner, online. And so this would help prepare students for that. Certainly, there are also a lot of work environments that are going this direction. And again, it helps to prepare kids for that. One of the other advantages is a staffing advantage. If you think about difference in staffing elementary classrooms and high school classrooms, elementary teachers are rock stars, particularly early elementary, because they teach everything. High school teachers don't do that. If you're staffing a high school, you need specialists. You need somebody who is really a science specialist, somebody who is an English specialist, somebody who's a math specialist. You can't get away with a small student body staffing that with one teacher that's going to teach everything at the high school level. And so by accessing a lot of the curriculum online, it's holding staffing costs down significantly. One of the concerns that our team has talked about, one of the things that I've heard from a number of folks is a concern about we need to make sure we're creating community, we're creating relationships. That's one of the things that really got destroyed during that COVID era, was kids relating to each other. And so we've talked about different ways that we can make sure that we are building those positive Christian relationships. We're building that Christian community. Certainly, requiring kids to take some classes in person will help with that, particularly if we're teaching a theology class. That's a great way to build community. That's a great way to get kids talking with each other, to get kids talking with instructors. Having the opportunity for collaborative work in that learning center is a way to build some of those relationships. We've talked about what could we do to connect students from a high school level here with some of the youth programs and some of the congregations in the area, our own here or going beyond that. Can we connect kids up that way to help build that community? Having kids here, high school kids here, we'd have a great opportunity to connect them with some of the younger kids in the building, where they could be mentors for some of those younger kids, and we can build those types of relationships. We've talked about the possibility of offering some elective types of things, whether it's an elective course or whether it's just taking a time out halfway through a semester, taking a week, and just bringing in a bunch of volunteers and doing some very creative elective types of things with volunteers. We've talked about service types of projects, service opportunities that we could connect kids with. Just all sorts of opportunities. So one of the things we would want to be very conscious of is building those relationships, building those connections. That's what they're doing down in Gilbert. As I said, we see that as being a very viable starting point for us. Would there be some things that would be different? Absolutely. One of the things that the team has talked about, and it came from a suggestion at our earlier meeting, perhaps we should be requiring kids to be on campus more than just 3 mornings a week. Maybe particularly with 9th graders, 9th and 10th graders, we require them to be here a significant portion of the time. A lot of different possibilities. Could we teach more than 2 courses here in person? If we could, that would help financially. So a lot of things that might be different, but this just seems like a really applicable starting point for us. So, Pastor?
Bill. So Bill mentioned the information meeting back in April, end of April, and there were a number of things that came out of that were very helpful for us as a team, because that was still the incubation period where there are lots of uncertainties, lots of questions. And out of that information meeting, which was well attended, we had a good number of people in person, an even larger number of people who had tuned in either during or after that with the live stream. And the support that we've got as far as follow-up emails, lots of encouragement from parents, school parents, members of Immanuel, it was tremendous. What we did is we formed a high school interest email group that we are going to be utilizing as we move along to share information on that. That includes all of our Immanuel leadership, our executive council, board of day school, and our board of elders, and is open to any of you. If you are not on that but would like to be, email us and just let us know. Email at highschool@immanuelloveland.org, and we get you added into that with some more regular communication that is going to be coming. After that information meeting and our debriefing as a team, we believe that really the best decision for us would be to target a start date of a year from this fall of 2024. To do that and to put ourselves in the best position to open at that time, we also feel it's very important that rather having this driven by our team with other volunteers, that we bring on at least a part-time director, administrator, principal type person to take the lead and to get that started. That individual, as we're envisioning, would help lead the team and future volunteer teams throughout this initial planning process, and also would give more focused and direct attention to all the details that need to be covered, including PR, marketing, curriculum, organization. There's just so many details that for us as a what has been the exploration team. It pushes us beyond what we are able to give some good direction to. Now, as part of the exploration process, we've reached out to various contacts that all of us had, trying to connect with various possible individuals. One person that came to the surface is right here at Immanuel, Rick Overton. And Rick, could I have you stand up just so you can put a face to a name? Rick and his wife Annette have been here for a number of years now. And just a little bit about Rick. Rick is fully retiring from Blevins Middle School up in Fort Collins in about a week. Not necessarily counting the days, but you're there. Has been at Blevins for 20 years. Spoke with Rick early in May, just to have a conversation, explore what may be possible, and how he was feeling about all this. And I can share that through that conversation, what he expressed was some real excitement about the possibility, and very open to helping lead this process in whatever capacity that we feel would be beneficial to move us forward. Then on May 11th, a few weeks back, as a team, we met with Rick in person. He came down to talk through some of the expectations, some of the hopes, some of the needs, and it really was a very inspiring and encouraging conversation. And as we've been walking through this exploration process, we've been blown away by how it seems that God's not only opening doors, but is kicking them down. Rick is an amazingly qualified individual with not only the academic credentials to do this, but a faith base as a very strong Christian, someone who's open-minded to creative thinking. Already out of that conversation with the team, started brainstorming, talking about, well, how can we start this coming fall integrating some ideas with our middle school, and already giving those middle schoolers a flavor of what may be coming, and to be able to try out some of these kind of neat possibilities. Rick's very articulate. He knows education. He knows leadership. Now, we've made no promises to Rick, but in our exploration, believe that he would do an outstanding job as a part-time director that we believe is both workable and realistic. As a team, another concern that we have been very, very mindful of are the financial concerns. We've carried that from the beginning. That came out in that information meeting. It came out of our leadership team meeting. And it's a reality. In anticipation of this, I've met with a few different people, and I have secured commitments of $60,000. Matching. They are putting up the $60,000 to be matched, and if this passes and goes through in short order, we'll be putting that out to our school families, to our congregation about this opportunity. And if we were able to match that in relatively short order, it would provide us with $120,000. That we'll be sharing with you shortly a general business plan that we have put together, but it would see us through the first year as we're anticipating it, and give us a start into that first year of the actual high school. Originally, the goal was to have $100,000 as a challenge grant. For those of you on the leadership team, that's what you heard me say a couple weeks ago. There have been a number of other factors that have come into play in terms of security here at Immanuel, and that assessment and things we're trying to figure out with that, and some other things as well. So with the three families that I approached, and all three positive, gifting us with that $60,000, as a team we thought, you know what, that's good. Let's call it with that, and if we can achieve that goal or push beyond it, it's bonus. But to know that would get us started and move us into and through the first year. if any of you are interested, talk to me. I'm all ears with that. Now, mentioned a business plan. Bill Busacker, our numbers guy here, has put together an initial, but we think a pretty realistic business plan. We made copies of that for you so you've got it and don't have to squint at all the little numbers on the screen. But Bill, I'll let you go at it.
I don't know that you've got this part on your sheet. This is just a very simple estimate of what would be needed for the coming year, the coming fiscal year. One individual half-time salary and benefits, and then looking at any building modifications that need to be made, furniture that needs to be brought in specifically for that learning center type of facility, estimating that at $30,000, and then any other supplies, particularly public relations materials, just throwing a number of $10,000 in there. So that initial year, looking at about $93,000 as a guesstimate of what we would need. One of the questions that I have heard that came up, do we have the space for this? Absolutely. We've got classrooms in the upper level that are being used 1 or 2 periods a day or less. They could be repurposed for high school classrooms. We have a room that had been a computer lab. The way things have gone, now students here have access to either a Chromebook or an iPad, so that computer lab really isn't used anymore. Aside from that, the computers have been here for a very long time, so that is a room that could be repurposed for that learning center. Now, the sheet that you have, does everybody have one? Anybody who doesn't, raise your hand. Kathy's got some extras. Kathy, up here? Of course, all the way across the room from you. This is a reasonable estimate of what the first year of operation might look like. So I would direct your attention, first of all, to the upper right-hand corner. Need to make some basic assumptions. So the assumptions that I was working with were, number one, students are going to provide their own technology. They'll bring in their own laptop. If there are any books that need to be purchased, students are responsible for those. That probably isn't going to be much of a factor with online courses. Assuming that we are purchasing 5 online courses per student. Now, if we can cut that number down, that's going to make a difference, but that's our starting assumption. And assuming that for that first year in operation, we're staffing this with 1.5 full-time equivalents. Essentially 1 full-time equivalent to be working with the kids, and then a half-time would be more of an administrative oversight type of position. To get some idea of what income might look like, I had to throw a number for tuition in there. So just as a point of comparison, for the coming school year, Immanuel's middle school tuition and fees amount to $8,500 per student. As a point of comparison, Res, for their high school program for the coming year, tuition and fees are just short of $12,000. So I just picked $9,000 as just a starting point for that tuition. So over on the left upper hand corner, are what I'm calling the fixed costs. So their salary and benefits for the 1.5 time positions. And then I'm just throwing in an extra $30,000 for other program costs. And then top middle is the cost per course from either Genesis or Orange Lutheran Online. And you can see there's a significant difference there. I'm using the numbers that they publish on their website. Is it possible that if we are doing something like this, we could negotiate a lower per course cost? Very possible. So using all of that, now I've got two tiers going across. This is the problem if you give a math guy an assignment to do something with a spreadsheet. You get numbers all over the place. Going across the top tier, those assumptions are that we are purchasing the online programming from Genesis Virtual Academy in Mayer. And so if you look down the left-hand column there, I'm using 15 students. We need to take the fixed costs, which are $168,000 from above there. We need to prorate those out per student. So that prorates out to $11,200 per student. Those 5 online courses would come to $3,200 per student. So our per student cost would be $14,450. If we are charging $9,000 per student, obviously there's going to be some support beyond tuition that's going to be required. The total for all 15 students, this is the total, not per student, the total would be $81,750. Now, down below that, I've done exactly the same thing, but now we're purchasing the online programming from Orange Lutheran, so the cost per student for the fixed costs are the same. The cost for the coursework is higher, so the support required there for the 15 students, total support, $111,000. That's sort of the worst case scenario financially. If you go over to the far right, now I've just repeated that with 30 students, and in between I've done it with 20 and 25, so you can see the various iterations there. But with 30 students, if we were to do this 30 students, if these numbers are good numbers, if we're purchasing it from Genesis, we're breaking even. If it's coming from Orange Lutheran, the support required is down significantly. There's a lot of guesswork in here, obviously, but we feel the numbers are realistic enough that they at least provide a point of discussion.
All right, thank you, Bill. Now, we met with Immanuel's leadership, Executive Council, Board of Christian Day School, Board of Elders, 2 weeks ago yesterday on May 16th. And we shared really this very similar presentation. Was well received. There were some excellent questions that were raised. And then the recommendation to bring this to you, the Immanuel congregation, in a special voting assembly was unanimously passed by our leadership. So with all of this information, our team's recommendation to you, Immanuel congregation, is this, and there are 2 parts to it. Those are, as Immanuel's high school exploration team, we recommend that the work of this team continue moving forward as the high school planning team with the intention of opening a high school at Immanuel in the fall of 2024. We're asking the congregation of Immanuel to grant authority to this team to raise funds, to spend the funds raised, and to hire needed staff. Part 2, if this is approved, we recommend calling another special voting assembly this fall when the timing is deemed right by the high school planning team to formally ask the congregation to approve the official start of a high school. So, as a team, we are putting this recommendation before you as a voting assembly. I would ask for a motion and a second, and then would open it up for discussion. Do I have a motion for that? We have a move. Is there a second? Thank you. So, the way I'd like to approach our question time, opportunity for you to ask questions, raise concerns, share ideas, anything at all that is on your mind right now. If you would come, we've got the 3 microphones here. Come on up so those who are on live stream can hear and everybody in here can hear as well. So, the floor is yours, folks.
Thank you. I feel like now I'm talking to you.
Hey,
That's my question on both Genesis and Orange. Are the curriculums seen by the Colorado Board of Education as fully accredited, meeting requirements for the state of Colorado, as well as county, city, all that kind of stuff? Or are we trying to enter into a Immanuel diploma, I guess, if you will? So if someone attends freshman through 12th grade,
yep.
is that fully accredited and that is recognized by Colorado Board of Education?
Bill?
Both schools are fully accredited.
Bill, why don't you go to the mic? Sorry.
I teach middle schoolers. I don't need a mic. Both schools are fully accredited. As far as who would grant the diploma, that would be a question we would want to explore, to make sure that we're doing it in the way that is most advantageous to graduates. But both schools, both online programs are fully accredited, yes. That's a great question.
The question is where are they accredited?
Again, I'm sure we would have to check that, but given the fact that these are designed for students to be taking coursework from anywhere, I have to believe that that would not be an issue. But that is something we would pursue, yes.
I guess go ahead and stay up there because my question is for you. So as I look at these numbers, as we have more students, the support gets lower and lower. The most expensive one, obviously, based on 15 students. We had 6, 7, 8th graders graduate this last. That's double the amount of what you have here. What do you base the 15 on? How do you think we get to 15? Because that would be, I guess, close to double this number if that was that way.
Yeah, certainly we have to be looking beyond the students that were graduating here from Immanuel. We've got to be looking at who can we be bringing in from the community. I think that also another part of that equation is, do we open with just 9th grade or do we open with multiple grades, because that would give us more opportunity to attract students.
And part of
Does that answer the question, Sean?
Yep.
Part of what we've also received as far as some of the feedback is some real energy on the part of some PR going out. Not just Immanuel, not just Loveland, but some folks down in Longmont who said, I've got a whole group of friends who are eager for this. Now, are they middle school families with middle school kids? Not sure, but we're looking to push the word beyond, down to Longmont, Greeley, Fort Collins, Front Range. And so that is going to be a must to look beyond just us here.
I think this is also going to have a major impact on our middle school enrollment. Cheryl, can you talk to that just a little bit? You were sharing some things earlier today.
So we were looking at this, and one of the really positive things that we saw as we're looking at enrollment for the upcoming year, and I asked Bill this in our meeting today, of the 5th graders going into 6th grade, we are retaining 11 of the 12. Largely because parents are like, well, I don't know, I maybe want to make this switch from middle school now so I make friends before we go to high school. I asked Bill, have you ever seen that high of percentage? And he hadn't when he was here as principal, and I haven't, why I've been functioning in that role. Today, I was just curious where we were. So last year, we had 17 or 18, depending on the day I pulled the numbers, in registered for middle school. Today, we have 23 registered for middle school. I think largely, I mean, I can't point you to each one, but their parents are saying, okay, I have a good hope that there will be a high school for my child to attend. We had a family in today. They're still trying to decide because they don't know about the tuition, but their child has played sports with us all year. And they have been real impressed with being part of the band program, being part of our sports program. And their girls came in to do the assessment to be part of middle school because they want to make that change now with hopes that we have a space for them in high school. They know that high school is just a discussion. But what it is giving parents something else to talk about, giving us conversations to have with parents about what we're trying to do to provide a positive Christian, loving environment where kids can just be kids. How about they don't have to deal with the social issues out there? It's a pretty cool thing, and it's opened up some awesome discussions for us to have with parents regarding what they want out of high school for their children. So did that answer I kind of got into the numbers as we were doing that. Today, we have one more enrolled than we did last year on this same date at this same time. And we are still processing people because we've really worked on third source funding to help our parents who cannot afford Immanuel have an option to send their child here. And so that's a discussion for the marketing team, but we're focused on that as well. And I would see that we would want to be doing that for our high school students.
Thanks.
About sports, just wondering, I know sports did amazing things for both my kids in high school. Just wondering if there has been any discussion about that, what you think, what you're envisioning about that, anything along those lines?
Yeah, with sports, initial discussions have been, not sure if we can offer them or not. But if we are not able to offer sports at the get-go, kids are allowed to be able to participate in the public schools of the school of their district and where they are at. So they cannot be turned away from public schools where they live. So that would be an option, but it is one of the things that we are needing to talk about because that's a big part of life in high school. Yeah, Resurrection Christian School would be another option. Heritage up in North. Yep. So there are other options. Thank you for that, public and Christian, with that. Question is there the same for music, marching band? And the answer is yes to that. Kathy, are you going to speak to it?
Quickly, we had a concert here this year from a homeschool choir from New York, and I thought, why not? Why not combine our high school kids with homeschool kids in the area and do music here? We have what we need to have a music program here.
So again, options abound when it comes to extracurriculars and really comes to saying, what do we have the resources to be able to do and take care of in-house, and where are the other partnerships going to happen that will be a benefit? Randy.
Okay, a couple of questions. Let me preface this by saying I don't think there's probably anybody in the room that has as much passion for Christian education as I do. We've sent our kids to Immanuel. We sent them to Res for high school. We were driving both schools so that we could keep them in place. 2 out of the 3 have gone to Christian colleges. But I've studied a lot the last 4 years in business about a starting up a business. And in some ways, I know this is a ministry, but it's also a startup. And to give this every opportunity for success, one of the questions I wanted to ask is, you hinted at a little bit, but what is the overall financial situation of Immanuel? We've had, not very long ago, we had very bad financial situation. We had to have a capital campaign. You know, it's a great thing that some families are willing to step up and put some money forward, but what we're talking about is an ongoing thing which could have significant red ink for some years while we're trying to get it up to where it pays for itself. So since we haven't had the voters meeting to talk about the budget, do we have anybody that can speak to the financial health of Immanuel at this point?
Right, Don, are you able to say something to where we're at right now? Don, and you need to come up to a microphone. Don is our Director of Finance and Accounting.
That's my brother. Hi, I'm Dawn Bowers, Director of Accounting and Finance here. What we have decided to do is rebook all of the revenue and the significant expenses such as payroll for the entire fiscal year. I don't have any confidence in what has been recorded. So we have successfully rebooked the school revenue, and we're hoping to have the church revenue out of CCB by the end of next week, and then payroll the following week. So after meeting with Greg on numerous occasions, we really do hope to be able to working on the budget by the end of June with the goal of having it by July. So I hope that's good news.
So in a nutshell, I mean, we're not laying people off like my company is currently doing right now. Are we financially in good shape to the point where this is something that we're comfortable taking on? It looked like at a minimum $100,000 per year of ongoing expense.
Well, the thing I know for sure is our cash position is healthy. I mean, we do monitor cash on a daily basis and have that somewhat projected. And based on what Bob Cole has been doing for the last 3 years himself, maybe before that, those are the 3 years I've seen with him. You know, he's managed the budget here at Immanuel the same way. So I feel really good that we're finding different places and different ways to track the funds here at Immanuel. And in particular with the high school planning, we've actually set up a separate checking account for the funds that Pastor Glenn has been recruiting and enlisting for. So
okay.
I can't speak to the financials yet, but we're thinking positive and hopeful.
Okay.
Okay. The car show's doing great.
No.
All that money went to the bank yesterday.
All right. Perfect. Okay. Well, the second question then, again, kind of relating it to a startup situation. There are quite a few things you can do before you start spending money and hiring employees. So the question has to do with customer research. How many parents have we talked to get details on what they'd like to see in a high school, what would work, what wouldn't work, what the tuition pain points would be, what the expectations are? It sounds like we've got a great hypothesis, but one of the things that you do in business is to test that hypothesis by talking to customers over and over and over and over to the point where you really know that this is going to succeed right out of the gate because you've got proof that people will buy it. That's what we're looking for here. So what's the customer research status of what we've been doing here?
0. Outside, as far as specific data, what we've gotten is feedback, email responses, support, saying, we're in, we're ready for this, but there has been nothing specific as you would assume.
Can I also speak to that? I think it's important to understand that what we're looking for tonight is the approval to continue planning. And I think that is a part of the planning process that has to go on before we come back and ask for the formal permission to open.
Okay, but just to be clear, isn't part of the recommendation also to start spending money that is going to be donated?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that is true. I think our team feels we have to do that in order to be able to do a good job with the planning.
Thank you, Randy. Jerry?
This I can speak to. Can you hear me? Okay. I can't hear myself. That's a problem. In November and December of 2019, we started the fundraising, and in the end, we in December we got pledges that allowed us to set a budget of a little over $1 million, a princely sum. And several months later, a huge headwind hit our country with the pandemic. Nobody knew, what was going to happen individually. You didn't know what was going to happen with the church. And I think it's a real tribute to everybody here that despite this, people met their pledges and obligations and raised over $1 million. That's a lot of money. So after that was over, I know a little bit about this because I tracked everything that went on financially to it. So it was great. People just did what they said they were going to do, even though I know it was not easy. And there were people coming to me with that. But in the end, they exceeded. Many people exceeded what they had pledged. What this tells me, and also what I had for experience in Rapid City, in Rapid City, when we built a church there, we had to come up with $4,200,000. I didn't have hardly anything. Nobody believed we could do it because we didn't have a congregation even this size. And they paid that off at 13 years instead of 20. What I'm telling you and what I see, and it's an experience throughout the whole time that I've been involved with churches, is if you set your mind to do something, it gets done because you have the Lord as your leader. And so I don't know what the future will be. I don't know what our finances will be, 2 months from now, 10 months from now. But one thing I know is you folks will carry through and you'll do what you need to do. And the second thing, since I'm up here, and you're a captive audience, so I like captive audience. I've been studying for a number of years the totalitarian people who develop totalitarian governments. I've got a bunch of stuff. Read it. Today I read the Nazi primer that was originally in German, but it was translated recently into English. What you're seeing in your society and seeing with your education has been done before. The same stuff is going on, and that happened in the 30s. It's nothing new. What bothers me when I look at, and I studied education, and there is an individual named Paulo Freire whose philosophy has been used in education for many years. He was a Marxist. He was very definitely a Marxist, and he was of that philosophy throughout everything he recommended. That's a little bit what's happening with why you don't see emphasis on the subjects, but you see emphasis on the background, what people can do to improve their lot, but it isn't studying arithmetic and in English and so forth. I don't think, from what my examination of all this is, that one can walk into our school system in the public schools and effect any real change. Because you have people who grew up with these philosophies, but we, in our Christian education, we grew up with those philosophies. And so to me, the answer is, it's an imperative to provide an education for our kids that avoids all the Marxism and instead relates to the Christian. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, Jerry. So it is, Randy, the points you raise are huge. And it is not to downplay the financial questions or the research questions. Those are things that need to be done. They really do. And again, the tension we're living with right now is, as I said earlier, dreaming big and trying to make this thing happen in a positive way and in a timely way. And so there's more that is going to need to be done. There are questions financially. Long term, I mean, what is that going to look like at whatever size it may be? We don't know. There are lots of unknowns. And in some ways, what's here in front of all of us is kind of a scary thing. It's a step of faith. I wouldn't say blind faith, but it is a step of faith that is going to need to be followed up with what our Lord, I believe, expects of us, is to use the resources God has given to us, intellectual resources, financial resources, wisdom, planning, all of that. It's an ongoing tension as we walk the Christian faith and live the Christian life, to use all of those things. So, please don't hear me as far as saying, hogwash to the money. We're going to have to pay teachers. We're going to have to pay bills. We're going to have to make this happen financially. And it will be a challenge for us. So, what else? Questions? Comments?
One thing that I think is interesting is that we have some really amazing resources in terms of our 25 acres of land, and that our assets are so much greater than our liabilities that we have room to do this. And you never know. There's always doubt. But we're sitting on some spectacularly probably valuable land that we would need to go get any additional land if we wanted to expand a high school. But we also have land that some great 287 frontage that we could conceivably sell and still have plenty of land to do this. So we're not, I guess the point is, we're not without assets. We're not in trouble financially. This is going to be a challenge for sure, but I think God has uniquely blessed us with some pretty interesting and fascinating resources that we could use in this.
Thank you, Greg. Others?
Yeah, I guess for me to be totally sold on this, I've had some thoughts about just generally about Christian high schools as we had our meeting here. And when kids are pretty young, like grade school age, they tend to believe pretty much what you tell them. But once they get into high school, they're a little more skeptical. They're a little more able to think for themselves, and they don't just swallow everything. And so I think a Christian grade school is especially important. For a Christian high school, I know at the beginning we were talking about how we should engage our culture and that kind of thing. It seems like a Christian high school is kind of like disengaging from our culture. It's choosing to kind of get alone in our little corner and hunker down and do our own little thing and let everybody else do their thing. The parent in the video, if she wouldn't have had a child in that school, what was going on there, that might have not have even been exposed. And so I guess that's my concern, that we're just kind of separating ourselves and choosing not to engage.
Great point, Bill. So that has been raised and talked about. The desire is not that Immanuel would be a cocoon, not to shelter the kids, but this would be continuing to engage the culture. I mean, it's an important question to ask, and a way that we need to approach high school in a liberal arts, in the best sense of those terms, a liberal arts education at the high school level, which encourages critical thinking, which encourages understanding of what is going on in the world, and it is not a desire to pull them out and to hide them and protect them. What it is an opportunity. There's some shielding that is there because of the harsh, and I'll say evil agendas that are in the public school right now, that it's real, that it is going on. And our desire is to affirm these children and young adults in terms of who they are as young men and young women in Christ. And that is engaged with the culture. But it's an excellent point that you raised, Bill, and something that needs to be thought through as far as how the instruction goes on and how that curriculum is put together. Teresa, you want to speak to that too?
I do want to, yes. So I've had 3 kids go to Christian high school recently and 2 Christian college, and they were not cocooned at all. There were gay kids at both Concordias and Christian schools. And there was non-Christians, and there was sin, and there was bullying, and there was everything I think that they have in the public school. But the benefit was the teachers love Jesus and are able to help them cope and deal with all the crap that is bombarding them. So I never felt like my child was, our experience, was protected and in a cocoon at all.
And I'll add too that, thank you for that, Teresa, your personal experience. Jim found actually very early on in the process, as we solicited input, spoke very directly to that. And he said, we better make sure that we are not doing that. And as an educator, as a missionary, that's where his heart's at. And so that was put on the table from outside of the team very early on. But it's, like I said, a very legitimate and good question to ask, that we need to make sure we understand who we are and how we're approaching the educational process.
And coming from I worked in public higher ed at CSU for 20-some years. And so to cocoon our kids a little more, I'm not saying we should cocoon them, but I'm going to say that at certain institutions, there will be no validation for their Christianity. That will be totally swept under the floor. So if they have that strong base going into a public institution for higher education, they will have that internal validity because they're not going to get it at a public institution. That being said, Bill is absolutely correct in this model of education will so put them at an advantage when they get to higher education because they have turned a lot of their instruction into hybrid, and they're doing the Zoom meetings for group projects and stuff like that. So to have that kind of a background going into the university will also really benefit those kids.
Good. Thank you, Stacy. So tensions, always questions that we need to keep asking about. Pastor Seeley.
Yes, I'm an ordained pastor for close to 60 years, and that whole time I have, my call from God has been to focus on the educational aspect of the ministry, which led me into doctoral study at Michigan State University, graduate study on human learning research. And I've had a lot of all this experience putting that human learning research together, and have found that as young people mature, and particularly as they mature from childhood into adolescence, a whole lot goes on mentally and developmentally. And there is an unwarranted assumption that has existed in the church for many decades that all we need to do is raise our kids in childhood and maybe middle school, and then they'll be all right. Then we can send them off into society and they'll be okay. Well, friends and fellow church members, it's not okay. I started out early in my ministry with youth ministry, and then have always been involved in the educational development. I've seen it, I know the research on it, and I've seen it act out, lived out in life. When they emerge into adolescence, they go into this whole very complicated and extensive process of identity development. And they're very vulnerable at this point. And if we send them out into the public school arena that Jerry just described, and I've had a lot of involvement in that, including with our many conversations with people in our Thompson School District, and a lot of reading on this and conversations, that is a dangerous situation. Thanks be to God, we have a lot of Christians still teaching in the public schools, but they're under a lot of pressure. There's a limit as to what they can do, and we've got to support our young people. They're vulnerable in high school. They need the support that we have. Nobody's going to give any more support to our young people than Immanuel Lutheran High School.
Thank you, Pastor Seeley.
So continuing to talk off of that a little bit, I was blessed enough where I attended Immanuel all the way up through 8th grade, and then was thrust into a public school environment for the first time in my life. And suddenly, all of the science that I had been taught was wrong. God didn't create the world. What are you talking about? It just happened. We're random chance. And that's a fact. I was taught it was a theory here at school. When did that become a fact? When did science prove that? And so everything that I had built everything on all the way through 8th grade was suddenly shaken. And I'm so thankful that I was able to stay as tied in here as I was for so many of you who were mentors through all of that for me. And I'm getting emotional because I'm really passionate about this. But high school was really hard for me. It was some of the most challenging 4 years of my life. And there is a reason that I went running back to Lutheran education as soon as I could for more than just career choice. I feel so strongly and passionately about the community that I built here, that I continue to maintain through worship here, and just everything that I received here, and to have that opportunity extend past 8th grade, I think is something that would be extremely valuable, and not sheltering, not running away, because the world is out there and we're going to be exposed to it no matter what. My generation is broken. My generation is being targeted and attacked very heavily and very harshly. And it's really scary to be a part of, and to be out there and to see friends and people who I know and went to high school with change their name and their gender on Facebook all of a sudden one day with no warning. And to see somebody who I was really close to through theater for the first time in 3 or 4 years and find out that they're a woman now. There's no words that can describe how hard that experience is. And that's something that is new. That's something that my generation is experiencing and wrestling with for the first time in human history. And if we can even have the slightest barrier between us and the terrifying sin-filled world that is out there, if we can maintain that hope and that trust even a little bit, because there is hope, and that hope is Jesus, and that's something that is so missing in the world and in my generation especially. And it's something that we have, and it's something that this high school has the opportunity to give to so many. And it's something that I feel really passionately about and really strongly needs to happen. So thank you all for being here. Thank you guys for being online and for taking the steps that ensures that this is something that will happen and will protect and teach and nurture kids and teach them that we are created in God's image as we are, and there is nothing that I need to do to make myself better, to make myself more worthy of anything. I am worthy and I am loved just the way I am, and that is something that I took away from here that I'm able to go out and spread into the world now, that I feel like a high school would continue to instill even stronger into kids. Yes, absolutely. It did.
And when I think about starting a high school here, I think parents have to know what they're buying. They're not going to be able to buy a fully developed theatrical program that they would give to their students. What do you think about that as a student who benefited from a lot of the extracurriculars? Could you have jumped into your local high school and done?
Yes, there is the option for homeschoolers and students of non-traditional schooling to audition for theatrical opportunities in the public school setting. It's similar to what we were talking about with sports and with marching band. The same stands for drama. You don't have to be an enrolled student at the school. You can say, hey, I'm homeschooled. Can I come and do this show with Mountain View or with Loveland? And the answer, as far as I'm aware, unless things have changed in the last 3 years since I graduated, is yes. And as far as I know, a similar thing stands for choir as well. That might be a little bit more difficult to make work with scheduling and having the in-person classes that we've been talking about mandating. But with Kathy here and the musical prowess that she has, I have no doubt that we would be able to develop something, make something work, even if it is that idea for the homeschool choir. Take the high schoolers here who are interested and build something from other homeschoolers in the community and just have something even as simple as that, just some sort of creative outlet there, I think also would be very workable and very viable. Mm-hmm. Right.
Knowing what I know now, even as involved as my girls have been in drama and in music, if Bailey wasn't graduating now, I truly don't know what we would do. I don't know that I would trade the benefits and so many challenges that came with, especially the arts and the theaters. That world has changed drastically and dramatically too. It's the 6 years that my girls have been in high school. If we weren't done, I don't know what we would be doing. And look, any opportunity to combat that, and homeschooling is what we would be looking at, because I don't know that the other ones would have been an option. And this, at least, of the hybrid model and of other opportunities, I don't know. It is a tension, because they did benefit greatly from it, but also the challenges that came with that were huge and are getting greater. And I don't know that it's a world that I'd be willing to buy. I'd rather buy into here than the trade-off. I don't know that the benefits would be worth the yuck that is out there anymore. It's scary.
And I may be a little naive, but if parents are looking for this school and they know that it's a new school that's starting up, they may take that already into account. Like, this decision is because I want my child to be in this school, and we will find the resources for them to play soccer and to sing in the choir and to audition for plays. If we know that we're building a high school, because all of that may come then, but I think if parents are, like Beth said, you know, our kids are graduated now, but I have grandkids now that I don't want to see going to public school. And I think that parents with that mentality will say, this is a new school, and I am going to put my all into it when I put my child into it, and we are going to make this experience for my child as best as we can, knowing that Jesus is the center. That's my naive optimism. Maybe.
Bill, were you to speak to that, or?
Sorry, you have to raise it.
I just put it down. Gail, your point is exactly right. We need to be very clear with prospective parents about what we can and cannot do. One of the things that as a team we've been very much aware of, this may not be a school for every single student. There are some students who will not work well in an online setting. There are some students who really need that full athletic program that we may not be able to offer. This may not be for everybody, especially initially, so we will need to be very clear on here's what we can do, here's what we can't do, here's what it looks like.
Good. I'm going to go Barbara, and then we'll come back to you, Teresa.
I just want to say, I was a single mom since my son was 2.5. And if I had to send my kid to public school nowadays, I would not do it. We have to surround our children with a community, a Christian community. Yes, they're going to have interaction with outside Christians, but they're also going to be surrounded, so they're going to have the best chance.
Thanks.
I was on the Lutheran High School Committee 20 years ago that failed. And to your point, that was one of the big reasons it failed, was because we could not provide the sports and the arts, and there was a tragedy, yes, but we couldn't get we had one student, we could not get anybody to support us because we had nothing of that. But it's different now. It's 20 years later now, and it's different. So, but that was huge.
And I have had parents, I mean, as a teacher here at Immanuel, I've had parents who thought they were buying something different than we were prepared to sell. I think our marketing for this school has to be very, very, very honest and transparent. We don't want kids here that aren't ready for what we are offering. So and that's a real concern because we had a failure. And I think it was hard. Yeah. But I would support a school here with my whole heart, with honesty and.
Yeah, and it is important. And again, we need to operate with integrity. And I think Bill said it best. This may not be for everybody, but it will be for some.
You know, I think one thing we need to keep in mind is that we are living in a post-Christian world. You know, at first, I think we thought, well, that just means there are fewer Christians around than there used to be. Now, it's way beyond that. We are in a spiritual battle, and most people don't even understand what Christianity is. And so when they think of Christians, all they think of the things that we're against, right? And we're on the defensive all the time. Whereas in reality, Christianity is a way of life and a worldview. Complete way of life and worldview. And there are so few people out there who think of us that way that we need to share that. And I think we can, you know, there are thousands of Christian families in this area who are stuck in public school and are probably going to be there because they can't afford any tuition. They need our help too. I could see this high school offering some classes to Christian families. And like Brianna mentioned, this assumption that the theory of evolution is true, I got news for you. There are all kinds of resources that address intelligent design versus evolution, and I've taught some classes on that. And we've got to arm people, because the theory of evolution has scientifically fallen apart. We've got to engage. We've got to talk about that, and there's no reason why we can't be putting out information about things like that, or Christianity, God's truth speak to economics and business and government and everything. We got to share that stuff. And so I'm just saying, I think this school we could put things out that not just the students, but that would help so many kids, like Brianna was dealing with in high school, overwhelmed in a spiritual battle. And we can't stay on the sidelines anymore. We've got to help people like Brianna and lots of other kids out there so we can do more than just hold our online classes here. We can talk to people about what's a Christian worldview have to say about economics or government or intelligent design versus evolution and that kind of stuff.
Thanks, Greg. Bill?
Yeah, I'm reminded of a Bible passage. What if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul? And I think that's the most important thing. I've been in Lutheran education for 45 years. I've seen kids go out of the 8th grade, in through high school, get into college, and they lose their faith. University is the biggest loser of Christianity. So we have to give those high schoolers something to base it on. They're developing yet. And brain studies show that your brain isn't developed until you're about 25. So I think these parents that have gone through Lutheran schools, and I've known some that have gone through Lutheran high schools, who found their way into other jobs, other vocations, and so forth. But the major thing is, what about the soul?
Thank you, Bill. All right, let me put up once again the recommendation, and we will put this to a vote. So what we are voting on is, as Immanuel's high school exploration team, We recommend that the work of this team continue moving forward as a high school planning team with the intention of opening a high school at Immanuel in the fall of 2024. We're asking the congregation of Immanuel to grant authority to this team to raise funds, to spend the funds raised, and to hire needed staff. If this is approved, we recommend calling another special voting assembly this fall when the timing is deemed right by the high school planning team to formally ask the congregation to approve the official start of a high school. So the way we're going to do this is planning team members are going to be handing out slips of paper. We're going to do this by paper vote. For those who are online, the instructions for you, if we can have that up on the screen. At the bottom for online, text your name and vote yes or no to that number, which is Marcus Howard's number, who is on our live stream right now. For those of us who are here, do not text Marcus, please. This is not Chicago. So, one vote. Take your slip of paper. We've got some pencils, pens we're handing out as well. Make your vote and then return it back to center or side aisle. Our team members will pick that up and tally. No, here you do not need to put your name. You do not need to put your name if you are here. We're doing that online just to make sure it's legit. Not that we don't trust you online people. We love you too and are glad you are here. But just to make sure that everything is on the up and up. All right, has everybody turned in? Everybody here, turned in your vote? Hold it up if you've got it yet, your ballot. All right, while those are being counted, I have no jokes, I have no song and dance, so let's stand up, just stand up. You guys have been sitting forever. So stand up, stretch your legs, take a moment. I'll call us back together here once we've got the vote. All right, gather back around. Marcus, do you have any? They're in? Okay. All right, thank you. The vote was 49 yes, 1 no. So we are moving forward with this, so thank you very much. And two things as we go. First of all, again, thank you for coming out, being a part of this, or joining us online. Pray. If you are not on that high school email group and would like to be, send an email to highschool@immanuelloveland.org. We'll get you added into that. Communication is going to start being a little more regular as we keep moving forward. And all right, 3 more positives, 3 more yeses. But keep your ears to the ground. As we said, we are going to be looking probably to reach out as far as matching these gifts that have now been given and take some of those steps forward to keep this moving. We're on a very short timeline and a whole lot to do with that. Opportunities are going to be coming as far as being involved in some of these volunteer teams. That again, hopefully is not going to be too far down the road. That we're looking, we know how important, how valuable that is to expand all those who are involved in this process. So, my friends, thank you. Go in peace. Serve the Lord.